Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to this Commerce Commission webinar. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Dr. Alice Hume. I'm the head of grocery here at the Commerce Commission. Joining me presenting on this webinar today is Laura Furno, who is our manager of grocery competition. So we're here to talk to you today about our wholesale supply inquiry. But first, it's just some housekeeping I'd like to run through with you. So we have a lot of people registered and attending today, which is really great to see. Everybody is anonymous. You won't be able to see who else is on this call, but I just wanted to let you know that we have representatives from the major supermarkets, we have suppliers, we have other interested parties from the sector, and we also have some media who have registered for this call. After the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for us to answer your questions. So please send them through. There's a Q&A link at the bottom of the screen. You'll only be able to see your question through that link, but we at the Commerce Commission, we can see all your questions, and we will be trying to go through and answer as many as possible at the end of today's session. We'll share a recording of today's webinar with you, and we'll also publish any responses to any questions that we don't have time to answer today. We recognise that we'll be navigating quite a lot of information for you today, and so we will be sending through some follow-up material. As part of this webinar, we're really prioritising giving you an overview of where our work on wholesale is at and answering your questions. So if there will be material for you to look through afterwards. If you have any questions about that, please do get in touch with us. There'll be details at the end of how you can do that. Just talk briefly about the agenda for today. So as I said, we're here to talk about our wholesale supply inquiry. The phase of that inquiry that we're at the moment is really seeking input, in particularly from suppliers. And so we're keen to set out what that looks like, what sort of information we're seeking, and how we will monitor an industry-led solution, and what the next steps for that are. So, as I said, today's webinar is really focusing on our wholesale inquiry. And this sits within the wider context of the important role that competition plays in delivering improved outcomes for New Zealand consumers. You'll also be aware of our work that focuses on addressing power imbalances and unfair conduct in the sector. And we're always interested to hear from suppliers and others of any concerns you have about that. That won't be the focus of our presentation today, but you're always welcome to get in touch with us about any of those concerns. And again, the details of how to do that will be there at the end of this presentation. The area we'd like to focus on today is about wholesale supply. And this has been identified over a number of years as one of the key barriers in the sector for retailers that are looking to compete with the major supermarkets. And so whether they're looking to enter the market or expand, access to a full range of groceries at prices that enable them to compete in the resale market has been an ongoing issue. And that was one of the reasons that the Grocery Industry Competition Act was put into effect. It placed regulatory obligations on our three main supermarkets, so Woolworths New Zealand, Foodstuffs North Island, Foodstuffs South Island. And one of the things that it set up to require them to do was to establish systems to facilitate wholesale supply. In the first year of the Grocery Industry Competition Act regime, we had a look at how those wholesale supply uh, obligations were being met. And when we looked, we came to some conclusions that we didn't think that the barriers to wholesale supply were being effectively addressed. And so we initiated a wholesale supply inquiry. One of our reasons for doing that was to obtain more information about the whole of the wholesale market, not just what was being asked from the regulated grocery retailers. So we're interested in all aspects of wholesale supply. And that's been particularly in relation to information from suppliers. So we recognize that as suppliers, you have an interest in and influence over the makeup of the offers that the supermarkets are currently providing, but also you have your own direct supply channels. So we really need your input at this point to understand how this approach is working and make sure that we're not missing out any visibility of potential unintended consequences if we were to take further action in relation to wholesale supply. So what we wanted to focus on today is our approach to how we're going to take forward addressing wholesale supply through an industry-led approach. We set out in June last year our preliminary findings from the inquiry, and the key feature of that is that we still believe that an industry-led approach would be the quickest and most efficient way to address the issues that we're seeing in terms of wholesale supply. And that would prevent the need to impose additional regulation. There are additional tools, regulatory tools that we could use, but we recognise that industry has the quickest and most efficient tools to address these issues. We are at a point where nearly a year after these expectations have been set out, we really need to have a good understanding of what that industry-led approach would look like and what the individual commitments of the supermarkets and of suppliers are in delivering that. As I said, we don't believe that imposing regulation um, would restrict parties to be able to develop their own solutions, but we definitely would like to avoid any unintended consequences. We set out our expectations for change in our preliminary issues paper and in an open letter in November last year. And I thought it would be useful if we just run through those areas that we're looking to focus on at a high level before we go into the detail about how we might look to measure progress against each of those areas of expectation. So the first area is price, and we recognize that um, rebates, payments, and discounts play a significant effect in terms of the price that wholesale customers are able to buy products at. And so this is one of the areas we recognize this is a difficult area, but it's one of the ones that we feel it's got the most potential to unlock a better pricing options for potential wholesale customers that are looking to compete with the supermarkets. So that is one of the main challenges that we're putting out here is how can suppliers and the supermarkets work to flow more of that promotional pricing through to wholesale customers. Range is another area where we consistently get feedback from wholesale customers, that there are products that they're not able to access, whether that's through the supermarket's own wholesale options or via direct supply. And that's where we would like to suppliers in particular to think about where their products are available and which of their products are available. So that's not just that could be maybe different flavors, different pack sizes. Those it's not just having a few products available is definitely limiting choice there for those competing retailers. There's also things that could be done in terms of making it easier for those competing retailers to uh, sign up to and order from you. And so we would welcome any movement in that area. And there may be other ways in which you think that your business could contribute to making uh, a better, an easier way for wholesale customers to order. I really want to emphasize that our commitment is to an industry-led solution. Therefore, we are not prescribing how you go about meeting our expectations. That really is for you to decide what is best for your business. So it needs to make sense financially, it needs to make sense logistically, it needs to fit in with your growth plans. And only you can make that decision about what is best for you, what fits your strategy, and what you think you can offer up. What we do need to do is to make sure that we have an idea of what the total industry commitment will add up to, and whether we think that will shift the dial on those areas that we're seeking improvement in. And so that will be the focus of the next part of the webinar that Laura will talk to in terms of how are we proposing to measure progress against those key areas. So just to reiterate, we wouldn't expect you to be offering up a solution that didn't reflect cost to serve and didn't reflect your ability as a business to actually be able to deliver to those customers. So it needs to fit with what you're able to do. We are also really mindful of the really difficult circumstances at the moment and the cost pressures and other supply chain implications of the conflict in the Middle East. And so we do really appreciate that this is probably not an ideal time to be asking for further information, but we do really ask you to try and prioritize this work where you're able to. The way that we want to be able to show the scale of the industry commitment to shift the dial on our focus areas is to pull together public commitments from the sector on what individual businesses will be doing to make changes in those areas and to be able to reflect that in the form of an industry roadmap. Behind the scenes, the Commission will also need to be able to be monitoring how progress against that roadmap pans out over time. And that's why we're talking today about what wholesale market indicators we're going to be looking at. One of the things we're very keen to test with the sector is how workable those measures are going to be, because we don't want to impose an additional burden by asking you to measure things that you are not already measuring as part of your normal business processes. I'm now going to hand over to Laura, who's going to talk in more detail about the indicators and how we're going to use them.
Thanks, Alice, and kia ora to everybody on the call. So, as Alice said, the purpose of this webinar is to give you an overview or a sense of what we're trying to achieve. I'm going to talk you through the what the indicators are and the measures that we're proposing against them. But I won't go through one by one. I'm trying to give you a sense of what we're doing. The information will be made available after this webinar. You'll have a chance to digest and can ask us further questions, provide comments then. So just move in here. So again, just a reminder, what are these draft wholesale market indicators about? So the purpose of these is to measure and track progress in the wholesale grocery market. So Alice has outlined what the issues are that there's been talked about for years. So this is really how we're planning to measure issues from here and also to help inform actions and interventions. The indicators can also help to inform you making commitments to improve wholesale grocery supply. So by understanding what we're measuring, we're hoping that will help to shape or give you a sense of commitments. But as Alice said, we're not predetermined on what those look like. That's absolutely up to you to come up with. But we feel like the measures will be helpful to be thinking about those. Um, we've They are consistent with the expectations and all the information that we've put out in the wholesale supply inquiry to date about where we want to see change. But these indicators are a bit more focused, and particularly we've grouped them into three themes. So those themes, which I'll describe a bit more in detail, are summarized as visibility, wholesale pricing, and varying access to rebates, discounts, and payments, and range and choice. So we want your input, as Alice has said, into these indicators. We want to ensure that we're not measuring something that doesn't work or make sense in the grocery supply industry, or that the measure itself ends up creating an undue compliance burden with the amount of information that we need to be seeking. So we need to understand that we will need information from you, but we're trying to do this in a practical way that's going to work over the long term. So, if I talk now about theme one, which is visibility, there's actually two parts to this theme. So, the first part being visibility for wholesale customers. So, those are the grocery retailers that are seeking wholesale supply. And that's their visibility over what products are available. Can they understand what choices are available to them? And then the other half of that is for you as suppliers, the visibility that you have over sales information. And this is particularly focused around that regulated grocery retailer offer. So the impact that we'd like to expect to see when these indicators are trending upwards or being met is that wholesale customers have visibility about the available products and pricing, and suppliers participate in RGR offers because they can monitor associated sales. So that's describing the theme and the impact that we'd see. Specifically, we've pulled out two indicators here, so one for each of those kind of concepts. And then across those, we get to the real nitty-gritty of what we're planning to measure. And so this is really where it comes down to will these specifics help us to understand the indicators that we're identified on the left side of this table? So I won't, as I said, I won't go through one by one all of the indicators and the measures. But just to again give a sense, we're looking for measures about whether wholesale customers, those grocery retailers seeking supply have clarity, and whether suppliers understand how their products are being on-sold by regulated grocery retailers. So a couple here that are highlighted. We are proposing to measure the number of key suppliers that have opted out of RGR wholesale offers. That's not to say that we're not interested in across the board what's happening and who's opting in and opting out. We're just proposing to focus for the purpose of our measure on a subset of suppliers we're calling key suppliers. So those suppliers that we have identified as being in demand through a variety of sources, through feedback from retailers, as well as understanding what's being sold, and also this will include a mixture of some really recognised, sought after brands, as well as private label. So our target for that specific measure is 0. Another one that we've just highlighted here, we will be looking, and this is in respect to the other indicator, for supplier ratings. So you'll be aware we've run a couple of surveys so far online, but we'd be looking to collect information from suppliers in the future about their views or your views on the provision of information about how products are being on-sold. And we're looking for a high level of certainty around that. So I'll move now into theme 2, which is around wholesale pricing and the varying access to rebates, discounts, and payments. And when I say varying access there, we mean the difference between the access of the major retailers to rebates, discounts, and payments, and access or ability to access for other rival retailers or other retailers seeking to compete. So here, the theme is around wholesale pricing models being cost effective and wholesale customers having reasonable access to those RDPs, including promotional funding. We'll talk some more. This is where the detail of the measures is important, so I'll talk to that point some more in a minute. The impact that we're hoping to see from success against this measure would be wholesale customers have access to groceries at wholesale prices that allow them to compete at the retail level. So here, when we get into the detail, for the draft indicator, we've said effective wholesale pricing is more price less discounts is more cost effective because pricing models are efficient, cost to serve, integrate actual costs, and any difference in price is objectively justified. So we've had a lot of feedback to date during this inquiry process around that there can be reasons for a difference in price between different customers. So we're seeking to recognise that, but that I guess assessing whether that difference is objectively justified. So again, I won't go through all of these measures. Do encourage you to have a good read after this. But some of the things that we will be looking at, and a key concept here is a wholesale basket. So in the last slide, I talked about key suppliers, a subset of suppliers that we will particularly be looking at whether they're opted in. in this and other measures, we'll be looking at a subset of products that again are in demand, um, and we'll be looking to, I guess, gather information around prices for those products. So that will include the retailers, the regulated grocery retailers' wholesale offer prices. We'll be looking to consider that against the prices that the retailers supply themselves at. We'll also be looking at the difference between key suppliers' wholesale prices for those regulated grocery retailers and the prices for other retail customers. We will be looking to gather information via survey from those wholesale customers or those retailers that are seeking to compete against the major retailers, and looking to understand satisfaction with wholesale price, and whether the cost to serve is reasonable from the various options that they have available to them. Now, it's really important to understand that we'll be looking at all these measures together. We understand that we'll be getting different pieces of information and kind of assessing it in a holistic way. So the inputs from a survey are just one piece of the information. It won't be a determinant on its own. It just helps us to understand the different perspectives and different sources of information in the industry. All right, moving now on to our third theme, or third and final theme, and this one is around range and choice. And so this is that wholesale customers can choose from a range of product options which meet their demands and allow them to compare alternative channels. And the impact that we'd be expecting to see with improved performance here, wholesale range is more competitive because wholesale customers have access to the products they demand, including private label. So going into the detail around this theme, the indicator here, unless there is an objectively justifiable reason. So again, understanding that there are a lot of differences in this diverse industry, and we're trying to understand and account for those differences. But unless there is an objectively justifiable reason, wholesale customers should have access to a range of groceries that would enable an efficient retailer to compete, the specific products they request, and the range of groceries they demand, including within product categories at different price points. So the measures here, they're all in bold because this is very much, I guess, focused on what products are available, and this is all of very high interest to you as suppliers, high relevance to you. So again, that concept of the wholesale basket, the availability of the products within that basket. We will also be again seeking feedback from those non-regulated or the retailers that compete with the major retailers about access to comprehensive range of the products that they demand. We'll be also seeking correspondence shared between different participants in the industry regarding wholesale customers' ranging demands and the responses, how that gets responded to, as well as seeking feedback again as to help complete the picture about how those requests are responded to. So that was a very quick overview of the themes and the indicators that we're seeking to focus on when measuring the wholesale market. I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit more about the roadmap. So, as Alice has already discussed, we are seeking from you feedback both on those indicators, but we are also seeking commitments from businesses in the sector as to how you think industry-led solutions can work, how you can contribute, what you can do. And we, I guess we think that those indicator themes will be a good way to help group those sorts of commitments. But as I said before, we don't have a predetermined idea of what they'll be. So we don't exactly know what this roadmap is going to look like. But essentially, it will bring together what has been put forward to us and put forward publicly to get a whole of industry picture of how the industry, various players in the industry, are thinking that that you can solve the issues and improve wholesale supply, and put that together in a transparent way that everybody can see. And then I guess creating accountability to meet those commitments. We will also be including a high-level assessment of our views of how that collective industry response will make a difference for wholesale supply, and that feeds directly into our draft inquiry report. So what is the draft inquiry report? As Alice said, we've had this process underway since September 2024. We've already put out some preliminary findings. The next stage of the inquiry process is to put together a draft inquiry report that considers those commitments and the other contexts that we have and the monitoring that we'll be doing, and whether we think at this point in time additional regulation is required, and if so, what the nature of that regulation should look like. So we will consider all the additional regulatory options we're required to by as part of the inquiry, all the options that are provided within the Grocery Industry Competition Act. So there's a series of backstops in there that we're happy to talk more about or answer questions on, as well as non-regulatory tools. We can also make recommendations for other types of regulation that hasn't been considered previously as well, or isn't currently provided for by the Act. So these three things, the wholesale indicators that I've talked through today, the industry roadmap, and the draft inquiry report will sit together. That will all be subject to consultation, and it will help inform a final report. So, next steps from here. As we've said, we really value your input. It's really important, and we want input on the proposed measures and indicators that I've discussed today. We want your public commitments about the actions you will take to address the indicators and the evidence to track the impact of those actions. You can speak with us directly. We will also and have been reaching out to certain suppliers of some products. So I did talk to the fact that there's certain key suppliers that we will specifically be looking at, but we do want to hear from everybody. You can, if you want to contact us, here's our email address here. So just to give a bit of timing context around that. So we're talking now and we're planning to continue engaging into April around the indicators and measures and to begin those discussions around commitments. In April, May, we will be seeking specifically to get those commitments in writing or in a public format. and that will inform in June. We'll put all that information together with our draft report for consultation. The target is June. All these timeframes are indicative, um, but that should give you a general sense. This inquiry began in September 2024, and so these are the steps that we're taking to complete it and the time frame that we're seeking to do that in. So currently our target for a final inquiry report and recommendations about the need for additional regulation in August. So at this point, I'm gonna invite Alice to turn her mic back on, and we are going to have a look at the questions that have come through.
Thanks, Laura. I've already got some questions to address. So we've got some questions that are sort of under that overall theme of um, I guess, wanting some more understanding of what the problems are that we've identified with current wholesale supply, and more detail about how people can go about addressing those. So what I would say is we are going to send through additional information as a follow-up to this webinar. That includes pointing you back to our preliminary issues paper and our open letter. Both of those were where we set out the areas of focus that we've gone through today, of areas where we think that currently wholesale supply is not meeting the needs of uh, potential wholesale customers. So we've already got um, information that from those wholesale customers that they are not able to access goods at prices that enable them to compete with the supermarkets, and that they're not able to access the range of products that they're looking for. As Laura said, we are entering a phase where we will be engaging with some key suppliers directly where their products are particularly sought after, to see if there's anything more that we can do to support them working towards their commitments. But our view is that any commitments from anyone in the sector that helps to make pricing sharper for wholesale customers, and helps to make more products available for them is helpful in terms of contributing to an overall better trading environment for those competitors. There's also been a question around who these competitors are that we're talking to, and I guess a bit of an acknowledgement that we all know that competition is limited here in New Zealand. That's the whole reason that we have a regulatory regime. And um, unfortunately, we're not at a stage where there's a major nationwide competitor entering the market. But what we have seen is that there are many competing retailers who may be geographically or product line limited in terms of their focus area of competition. All of those dollars spent at other retailers are important in terms of introducing more competition in the sector. And so we're not applying a lens that says you have to be a nationwide, at scale competitor to be important to shifting the dial on competition here. Laura, did you have anything that you wanted to add about the problem areas that we're
Yep.
seeing and the indicators that we're using?
Yes, thank you, Alice. So, yeah, so talking to that problem definition point, as individuals, you might be, and we have heard from individuals, thinking, well, this is this isn't an issue for our products, we think that wholesale supply is working really well in our area. That's all really valuable information for us. And so part of this exercise of developing the indicators and seeking the commitments is to also help draw out where people think wholesale supply is working well, and what information you think we should be looking or you can provide for us to show how it's working well. So there is an opportunity to capture not only areas that we want to improve and see improve over time, but some of the differences, as I said before, it's a diverse industry and it's difficult to generalize across everything. So we'd really like to get some of that nuance come out in the indicators and in the commitments and information that we put together in the roadmap.
There's been a question through about the current timing and the impact of the Middle East crisis on the sector's ability to respond. As I said earlier, it is something that we are really mindful of, and one of the other things that we're trying to do in this work is make it as easy as possible to engage with us and to offer up your commitments. So again, we've tried to really limit how much impost we're putting on you in terms of your time, hence our use of a webinar, and are focusing on a tiered approach to engaging with suppliers based on the feedback that we've had from retailers about which products they're very keen to access. So again, we will be keeping this situation under review, and we will be in touch nearer the time about how you can submit any commitments that you might have to us, and we will try and keep that as straightforward as possible. This is really the prompt to for your internal thinking within your organization in terms of what can we offer up, and so we're hopefully giving you some warning to have those conversations before we come back and ask for the specific commitments.
Just had a question through for a bit more detail on the key suppliers. Or I think there's been several questions on this. So we have kind of in our analysis selected suppliers of top selling products, most commonly demand products by competing retailers. We will be in touch directly if you are in that list. There's approximately 25. So realize this is a smallish number amongst the industry, but it contain a lot of the top selling products. But we still expect other suppliers to contribute, and we'll still be considering that focus really is on the measure. So open to feedback around that. I guess we're trying to draw a practical line here of where to focus our information gathering and measurements, but we are interested and we will be picking up through other sources, and that's why we've got multiple indicators, feedback on other products. There's ability for us to identify others and understand what's happening in the rest of the industry through some of those other indicators, such as the surveys. This is really about us focusing for the purposes of efficient engagement, now direct engagement, as well as measuring some specifics. But we are open to and we'll be looking at the wider picture.
There's a question here, Laura, about the definition of a wholesale customer. So obviously there is a huge range of entities who are buying goods for resale, which is the definition under the Act. In terms of what we're trying to achieve in the uplift of wholesale supply, we understand that smaller the smaller end of the spectrum in terms of wholesale customers, so your sort of corner dairies um, and others, that there's a significant cost to serve associated with those customers. And so um, we, we would expect that a focus on really shifting the dial on those key measures around price and range would have the most impact on larger scale customers. So whether they're in terms of, a larger store in a um, in a key location or a network of smaller stores that have combined together, that those would have more benefits than picking off individual small entities. So that's I guess that's where we would be seeking to have the bulk of our commitments. And one of the things that we have heard from wholesale customers is that sometimes it's difficult to approach suppliers when you're not a big supermarket, but you're also not a, a corner dairy. So there's this sort of category in the middle who are seeking to buy more. They've got some capability to be able to offer specials, and they're seeking to grow in the market. Um, One of the things we'd really like is for suppliers to be able to identify um, who's the contact person in their organization for those types of customers, to have a point of contact and to be able to have some price related negotiation with. So that would be a relatively straightforward commitment that suppliers could look to see how they can identify and work with those types of customers. Laura, we've also got some questions about scope, which I wondered if you could
Okay,
maybe
sure.
answer.
Okay, the first question is around alcohol and how we're treating alcohol in this inquiry. Uh, so the piece of legislation that we work under, the Grocery Industry Competition Act, its definition of groceries does not include alcohol. That doesn't mean that we don't fully understand that as part of the picture of grocery retail business in New Zealand, and it's something that we understand in a kind of broader sense as part of the picture, but it is not a focus for where we would regulate or intervene. So currently, that's the status of that. It's not a focus of this, but we understand it's part of the picture, and we're always interested to understand how alcohol supply is kind of affecting grocery retail competition. On the matter of fresh produce, very much covered by the Act and the work that we're doing, but the feedback that we have received to date through this process has been that generally fresh produce doesn't come up as the areas where people are having issues, and we acknowledge there's been information provided formally through the process, as well as feedback from a number of sources that the currently that the fresh produce isn't where we should be directing our attention in terms of this wholesale market question. So again, we're interested. We don't want to exclude anything from the picture, but our focus is not on fresh produce currently.
Um, Laura, there's a couple of questions about the roadmap that I think I'll pick up, and then I
Okay.
think there's one about how supplier commitments would be brought together that it would be good if you could have an answer for. So I guess a couple of questions that have come up about the roadmaps. So um, one is, are we only asking for suppliers to suppliers for commitments? Absolutely not. So the regulated grocery retailers, where we are having conversations with them as well, they have a lot of additional requirements and levers because obviously there's a requirement under the legislation for them to make wholesale supply available. So there will be a range of commitments that we would be expecting to see from them as well. And as I said, in that sort of other category, we are open to any commitments that might help improve the situation. The other question is around if you think that you're already have done everything you can to meet the requirements and have got a good story to tell. Does that mean we don't need to hear from you? Again, absolutely not, because one of the things that we would like the roadmap to be able to do is to enable us to show how wholesale supply has improved over time. So I don't want you to go away from this webinar thinking that there has been no improvement since the regime came into effect. We recognise that this is a really new way of working for the sector, and there was a significant piece of work for the regulated grocery retailers to stand up their wholesale offer to comply with the legislation and to talk to suppliers about what the requirements were and whether or not they wanted their product to be offered through that. So we recognise that that has taken time. Those offers have changed over time. We recognise that suppliers have also taken this opportunity to make new connections to new and expanding retailers, and that's really great. And we want to be able to tell that story too. So to show the progress from zero to where we are now, and then to show progress to improve the situation across the components that we've looked at.
I've got a couple of questions here around the roadmap and the commitment making process, which are really fantastic questions. Thank you. One of them is asking on our slide pack here today. We've talked about suppliers making commitments and just asking about what's happening with the rest of the industry. I guess today's presentation is focused on suppliers, but we are very much talking with the regulated grocery retailers as well in tandem, and they obviously form a vital part of the picture. We're looking for commitments across key players in the industry. The other question was around how do we, I guess, decide what is a valid or publishable commitment in terms of, and the question points out that one supplier can't speak for other suppliers. So yes, absolutely recognise that. We're not we're asking what you and your business can commit to within your mandate. We're not asking you to speak for others, and we wouldn't be expecting those commitments to speak for others. So I think that's a really good point. There is a question around how do we line all these up? So your competitors in diverse areas, how do we line it up and bring everything together into a cohesive plan? And I think that's a really interesting question. So at the moment, we are just looking to hear from everybody and see how it lines up, really. So this will be a bit iterative. This is a new thing that we're trying to do. This we don't think this is simple, but we want to talk to various perspectives, see what you think, what you're doing, what you have been doing is really important for us to understand, and what you think you could do, and we will pull those together and see how that lines up to form a solution. There will be a an opportunity for consultation, as I said, which provides an opportunity to maybe add or change, or once you see it together, we could see how what the feedback is on that. So this is new. It's iterative. We are going to work it out a little bit as it comes together. Now I've noticed the time, so it's almost 1 o'clock. So Alice, is there time for one more question?
Laura, I think if you could just recap on the timing from here, that would
Yeah.
be great. Thank you.
What I'll do is just go back to the slide so everybody can see it. Um, so as we said before, this inquiry has been in place since September 2024. The preliminary findings were released last June, really calling for that industry solution. We're getting to the pointy end of the process. So we are engaging currently in looking to engage further into April around these performance indicators and measures that I've outlined today. Um, in April and May, we are also, and obviously now as well, if you want to, wanting to have those discussions around articulating commitments and pulling those together towards a draft report that would include the roadmap in about June, with the view of a final report in August.
Thanks, Laura. Um, that brings us to the end of our webinar for today. There's details in the slides. So we'll send through just on this question slide, there's our email address if you need to get hold of us. If you've got any questions, we'll be sending through the slide material to people that registered and additional material. If you would like to contact us anonymously, we have a way to do that. You can find that on our website. We'll also send through a link as part of the follow-up. Once again, really appreciate your time in joining us today, and really looking forward to continue to work with you. We always want to hear from participants in the sector about your concerns, whether they be around this issue or just more generally about what's happening in the sector. So please do get in touch with us, either through the email address on the screen or through our anonymous tool. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Ka kite.
Yeah.